Sean, we've spoken a lot before about Ukraine not having a navy and yet being quite successful in schwacking Russian ships. And they've managed to damage or / sink a large handful, and now something like 25% of the Black Sea fleet. That's quite a big impact. How have they done it?
Well, it's a huge impact, as you say, for the Ukrainians that don't have a navy. Normally, you'd expect the country with a navy to dominate the Black Sea. That is not the case. How have Ukraine done it? Well, over the last few weeks, they've been using this Magura V5, which is a sort of drone that runs around the water. It's quite big. It's not one of these handheld things. It's 1,000 kilograms in weight. It's got a 250 kilogram warhead. Actually can run around at about 50 miles an hour, so it's pretty swift as well. Remote controlled. It can travel about 400 miles if necessary.
Really?
Yeah, and Magura is the name. Apparently, I'm probably not pronouncing it right, but it's based on the Slavic for goddess of war. And the Ukrainians have been very effective at using these against shipping. The most recent Sergei Kotov, which if you look at pictures of it, we'll show you pictures on here, but it's got lots of stealth lines about this ship. It's obviously low radar profile, low radar cross-section. It's only launched in 2021, and this is the third time that the Ukrainians have attacked it, but this time
they got it.
And there's some fantastic footage of them using swarm attacks to get it. But it's
several drones at once.
Absolutely, yeah. And
are these kamikaze drones, or do they come?
Yeah, no, they're kamikaze drones, remotely controlled, and apparently coming from they struck the left, right, and rear almost simultaneously. But what's interesting about the footage, because the Russians, it's not the first time they've been attacked by these. So one of the best defences you'd think is radar. Well, these are made of plastic, so it's quite difficult for radar to pick them up. Can you hear them? They're very quiet, so it's quite difficult to hear them coming. So you've got to be able to see them. As soon as they see them, the best defence that Russians decide is line all of their sailors up on the deck with guns and fire bullets at them.
It's a bit old-fashioned, but...
Yeah, but it sort of worked. Then they realised that by attacking at night, they didn't know where their bullets were landing, so you don't know whether you're... So they started putting tracer, the Russians putting tracer, those little once every 5 rounds or once every 10. Yeah, so that it just glows. You can see where the rounds are going.
Yeah.
And of course, that meant they could get aim better. So, of course, for the Ukrainians who are driving these vessels can now see where the bullets are going and dodge them.
Yeah.
They can, dodge away. So it's a really interesting whole...
cat and mouse, yeah.
No, exactly. And the Ukrainians have been very successful at taking out this vessel. And apparently now, what's interesting is that the vessels they took out, a lot of them were firing... surface-to-surface missiles, so ballistic missiles at Ukraine. I understand now, I think, that the numbers were that they've managed to down 5 of these ships that have been actually firing these. Now the Russians have only got 10 ships total. I think they include 3 submarines in that total that can fire these missiles at Ukraine, but they've all fled to the east side of the Black Sea. And
push them,
because they're scared. And the Russian chief of the navy, I think his name was Nikolai Yevmenov, has just been sacked because he's lost so much of his navy. So all of a sudden, this one of the most powerful navies in the world, admittedly, we're only talking about that remains in the Black Sea, has been absolutely decimated.
You can build a drone in 5 days. Takes you about 20 years to build a warship.
One of the reasons why President Zelensky was trying to have 1 million drones be built by his nation is they've been so successful at using these drones. Mainly for the small ones, but also as soon as you arm them, they can create all sorts of havoc. Over the last few days, they've been using them to attack fuel depots, Russian fuel depots and the like, but undoubtedly at sea. And I think although... From my perspective, drones are more of an irritant. They're not going to change the tide of the war generally, but they're really irritating when your stuff's being blown up, behind your front line. But what's interesting about the naval side is that if you run the clock back about 18 months, there was a real worry that Russia was going to attack Odessa from the sea, do an amphibious landing, because Russia seemed to want to take the whole of the coastline. And at the time, it was a credible threat. If you look at what Ukraine's done to the Black Sea Fleet Navy, almost certainly that isn't an option for them anymore. So they've actually had a material difference to protect one of their flanks, which is Odessa.
And the supply lines.
And the supply lines. They've also stopped some of these missiles being launched against Ukraine. And thirdly, I think most interesting is Ukraine desperately needs currency. It needs to generate something for its economy. Grain was the big thing. Russia's naval fleet sitting out at sea. Any of you ships come out of port,
You've had it.
You've had it. Now Russia's all disappeared off to the east.
Yeah.
So actually now Ukraine can get its grain out and earn vital revenue
Dollars,
to pay for its war effort.
Yeah, fascinating. I chuckled when you used the word irritating. The drones are irritating. 5 ships, 25% of the Black Sea Fleet seems quite a lot to me. I can imagine the first Sea Lord for Russia going to Putin and say, "Can I just give you an update, sir?" He said, "How's it going?" "Well, I've lost another 5 ships, sunk to the bottom of the Black Sea, and 25% of my fleet is missing." And Putin says, "I'm a bit irritated by that." Don't think so.
Well, exactly. I mean, it is worth pointing out that I'm sure viewers will remember that, the Black Sea is controlled. It's one point of entry, Bosphorus Straits. That's controlled by Turkey. Turkey, in a time of war, will not allow any military vessels either way. So both Ukraine and Russia only have the vessels that are in the Black Sea for the duration of the war. Russian Navy is much bigger than that. But for now, that's all they can use. And to schwack 25% of that, as you say, that's more than an irritant. And although I'd be the first to argue that the only real metric of success of this war is territory. That's why Russia is grinding away on the front line, still in winter, taking huge casualties, but on the front foot, because it knows that Ukraine is short of weapons. More about that later. But my goodness, Ukraine is still having a major impact on some of the lines of communication, and strategically, despite not having a navy, intimidating and scaring the Russian Navy into a completely different corner of the war.
Yeah, real strategic advantage.
Absolutely.